In this episode, we meet Jeremy Nicholls, supportive housing outreach leader at Visionwest in West Auckland. Jeremy did not come to outreach work through a housing career. He came through a Bible college as a taxi driver and many years working at a homeless shelter in Chicago's Uptown neighbourhood. He returned to New Zealand in 2021 and has been leading street-level outreach ever since. In this episode, Jeremy talks about what his team finds every day: people living in vans along quiet residential streets in Birkenhead and Glenfield, couples keeping the warrant of fitness current because the car is the house, a man who had been sleeping rough for 5 years because of a traumatic brain injury and nowhere to go. He talks about why outreach is relational work and why that is not incidental to its effectiveness, but the entire method. He talks about the stereotype that everyone sleeping rough is addicted or mentally unwell, why it is not true, and why antisocial behaviour in urban centres is routinely blamed on the wrong people. And he talks about what he wants: decisions about homelessness made by people who actually understand it. More information on this interview can be found in the episode description. And don't forget to subscribe to the Char Hub podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from.
Kia ora, Jeremy, and it's great to be here with you today. Thank you for taking time out of your morning, you and your team. I wonder if we could start with a little bit about you. If you could tell us who you are, your background, and what brought you to this role and work at Visionwest.
Okay. I was born here in West Auckland. Quite a religious family that I was brought up in out here, and sort of went to all the schools out in the Glen Cowston area. Then went to the Bible College of New Zealand, and from there I was a taxi driver for about 2 years after Bible College, and in many ways that Bible college and taxi driving opened my eyes in different ways to different poverty, and that was in New Zealand. So then I went over to Chicago for a ministry over there, and then I worked in a homeless shelter for about 25 years. Started doing outreach. That was back in 2004. So but yeah, we had worked in tent cities and so forth that were in the neighbourhood. Then in 2021, like I said, I was brought up in New Zealand, so our whānau would come back every 3 years and visit my parents and my brother and sister and so forth. And then we were coming back for 3 months, and then we ended up staying, and then applied for a job at Visionwest.
And your role here at Visionwest is team lead for outreach services. For people who don't know much about outreach services, could you kind of explain what outreach services are?
Yeah. So outreach is basically going and meeting people where they're at. And so we do that in a number of different ways. We get referrals from places like Auckland City Council, internally from places like citizens advice bureaus and so forth, and we go and meet people where they're at. We also drive around and we come across people, and we just try and meet them one-on-one. And like I was saying before, like everyone's needs are very different, so we try and take that into account.
And you've got a new mobile service here at Visionwest that you're just starting. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a mobile hub. It's an RV. A couple of the guys are taking it out. We go into certain areas, whether it be Newland or Henderson or Albany or wherever, because we have contracts within the North Shore and West Auckland, which includes Avondale and stuff. And so we go into those places because sometimes, there is those who are there are those who are hidden. Because of the different obligations that have happened, we will meet somebody who doesn't get an income because they've lost their benefit due to new obligations. And so it's like starting again, like ordering birth certificates or advocating for them at MSD or those sort of things. And so we hope that we'll be able to find more people who will be able to, and then from there we'll have a vehicle that we could, a car which we could take them to support them at different locations or get them into housing. And sometimes it's just starting that journey. And Tamaki has a lot of those who are hidden. You know, there's those who are very obvious, but especially West Auckland and the North Shore are more hidden in cars. And so, and they feel that they can't get what they need. And so that's where we sort of, they feel that they've been hurt. I mean, not feel, they have been hurt by the system. And so they really, so it's a hope to build that greater trust, especially with those who are more hidden as well, that we don't see, and they sort of just pop in. Or, you know, we've met a few people that haven't had any income for quite a few months, and so we have to start again, and that takes a long time. That does, you know, especially if they got no phone and no IDs or anything like that.
Could you tell us a bit about what you mean by hidden homelessness and the trends that you're seeing currently?
Yeah. So what I've really discovered over here is, like, people sometimes just view the homeless or those experiencing home or rough sleepers on Queen Street, Albert Park and K Road. But really, and sometimes they go, oh, there's a few out in South Auckland or West Auckland. But really there are so many people. We can't get an accurate number of how many people are out there. And not only that, we meet with those who are living on couches, who are in abandoned buildings from flood-affected houses in Ranui or so forth, you know, and garages and all that sort of. People are everywhere, but also some people, like there's almost like a network of people that come together, but then there's those who stay alone. Last year we got the North Shore contract, and what's interesting about the North Shore, West Auckland as well, is you have people that are living in cars down some random street, and within their cars, we don't know, they might go from Birkenhead out to Glenfield to Takapuna, and they go to different places. We would meet people who I mean, I was working with two guys. They barely go into, they were both bus drivers for years, and now they're in their 60s. One had a bit of a health problem. The other guy's probably 70 now. They're both living in their vans. You know, yeah. The cost of living crisis, I think, is really big for them. But you'll just see people. You know, it's I think it's relatively easy to end in that place right now, like with a health crisis. You know, your car breaks down or whatever it is. You have a we're working with one guy who was living in a house, and they were letting him stay there, and then they had a conflict and they kicked him out, so he was left out on the street, and he's got major health concerns. So there's all those sort of things that, and when you don't have that sort of network to be able to start again, like people think there's no homeless out there on the North Shore. There are so many out there, and people are starting to notice it, because last year I went and spoke to a community of churches and groups, and they're wondering how they can go, because they're starting to see it more and more. But it is hidden. It's like in this car park, in this park, in this street. And sometimes we get those concerns that come up. So people really just think of K Road, or maybe in West Auckland they might think of Henderson or New Lynn or Avondale, where they see people. But it's in these little hidden, it's in these hidden and affluent places, and people in garages, people in their car. Like, I don't think we can accurately get the number of people, because it's there are so many people out there, and Tamaki is such a huge place. If you go all the way from like Wellsford up to Wuri or the Bombay Hills or whatever, it's such a huge place.
And nationally, we've seen an increase in homelessness over the past year. And I know there's issues around data, but we know anecdotally from providers that there has been an increase. Have you seen an increase here in West Auckland and the North Shore as well?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think the meetings on the North Shore that we've had, and just coming together to fight, they've definitely seen it, and they've brought it to us to sort of address that. The North Shore doesn't really have much housing available, so that's sort of difficult there. If you go to West Auckland, I know this isn't really answering your question, but if you go to West Auckland or South Auckland, there is more like transitional housing first. North Shore only has one or two providers that provide that. And so, and people want to stay in the areas of where they feel safe, and we try and respect that too.
There's a lot of concern around antisocial behaviour, particularly in urban centres. From your perspective, how are these issues sometimes conflated in terms of antisocial behaviour and homelessness? And what's important for people to understand about the difference between the two?
I think there's often a blame of that it's someone who is rough sleeping. It's not, I'm not going to say it never happens. It does happen. But at the same time, I go to meetings in regards to that's part of our networking that we do. When I speak to providers that are in the areas, they will often say it's not those who are sleeping rough that are actually doing that. I think that outreach, and I saw this in Chicago too, I'm a big advocate for preventative measures, because the police or the ambulance, they respond to a need. But if you have someone who can come down and be that sort of presence, so there's certain areas that we'll go into and we will talk about that. And if we can get people housed, then we can help prevent those sort of things. And sometimes it's about reading the situation as well. Like, there's a mental health crisis in this country too. So if someone is going through an episode and we have that trust, I know somebody was going through the episode, and then we go down there and he's punching the air and things like that. And actually my daughter was with me, and I would go up and I speak to him, and he's like, oh, hey, he gives me a big hug. It's like the preventative actions, I think, so we'll go into those areas and sort of do as much preventative work as we can. But a lot of it has nothing to do with those who are sleeping rough. Like, even in one area I go to, I won't say this, the suburb, but it's often the teenagers from school that get into their two rival schools that get into their conflicts. But sometimes it's perceived that it's those who are experiencing homelessness that are doing it.
What kind of changes have you been seeing, and outcomes you've been seeing for the people that you and your team have been supporting?
On the negative side is like, I think there has been changes that has resulted in more like there's been changes on a big picture scale of that has resulted in more people being on the street. I'm talking about governmental changes here. So in regards to that, there's people who really struggle to meet their obligations. So they end up either losing their benefit, which means if they lose their benefit, then they can't pay their rent, which ends up resulting in homelessness. So we've definitely seen a lot more of that. And some people will say, well, they just need to keep their appointments. I mean, if someone's had a traumatic brain injury, I've met a few that got their traumatic brain injuries from Christchurch. They're up here now. They have short memory loss. They miss their appointments. That's one strike, another, and then and so there's things like that, it's not all people smoking meth. It's like there's so many different reasons why they don't meet their obligations, which results in more homelessness. The throw people out for no reason of their housing. In regards to positive, I think there are networks that we've created. So we do have that strong network with people within MSD, which has resulted in able to come forward and help people get back onto their benefit or get on the housing register, or whatever the needs are. There has been, I think the RVs is a positive thing. I think there has become, as a result of the increase of homelessness across the whole of Tamaki, there is more housing. And so we've been able to see more people, more supportive housing. We've been able to get more people into housing as a result of it. So yeah, there's so many factors. There's positives and negatives with anything. So the positives right now is our network has grown quite a bit. So within that network and within the strong relationships we have with council and with MSD, we're able to get people that are in need into a place and be able to have a discussion with somebody and say, this is their need, how can we make that work? And if we can, and sometimes it doesn't exactly work, but a lot of times it does. So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
And finally, a lot of our conversation today has really been about, it's been people-centered, and the work that you do is very focused on people. What would you want the general public to understand about the human reality of homelessness, especially the complexity of the challenges that people face?
I would want them to, I think what I've always tried to do is just show the humanity on the people's stories, to understand that, we can all end up in that spot. At the end of the day, we can all end up in that spot. In general, some people are like, it's only this sort of people, it's only this sort of person, or that ends up in that spot. And when you actually hear people's stories, you actually realize that it's a lot more complex. So even those who are all tattooed up and all that sort of stuff, and they have gangs, when you hear their stories and you realize that it's not as simple as just, this is a bad person, this is a good person, or you got to come in having that compassion, ready to listen. A lot of people just want someone to listen. Our job is to come in and to listen, hold people accountable for their appointments too. But but when you come across and you realize, this led to this, that which led to this, to this, and that's why all the networking is important. Just like we have Matanga Roranga, which is more like counseling, and so sometimes we try and help people get through that to deal with their different things. But yeah, you meet people who, I've met with so many people over the years, and it's just, this led to this, or it was a divorce, or it was the chemical imbalance and that, that nothing that they couldn't control.
Yeah.
And so it's just that we meet with so many people, and the stories are so vast, and personally, I met with thousands of people, so their stories are all over the place, and you hear about this, and when you work out how they got to that stage,
there's always a story behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you listen to those stories and you realize those things, and so to break down that barrier to say it can't be us, or it can't be our kids, or it can't be our parents, I think when I first started back in the 90s, and it was like, and you realize, oh, this could be my mum. I was young then, I probably didn't think, oh, this could be, you see little kids running around the shelter and you go, this could be my child, and it's like, and you sort of realize and try. So I would encourage people to put themselves in other people's shoes and realize there is a story behind each person that is highly, highly complex and deeply emotional, and they're just calling out for help and just trying to survive themselves, just like we all are.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today, taking the time this morning to speak with us. I'm deeply appreciated sharing your experience from the States and from here, and your wisdom. And thank you for what you and your team do here at Visionwest. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you.
We'd like to thank Jeremy for taking the time to speak with us. More information on this interview can be found in the episode description. And don't forget to subscribe to the Cha Hub podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from.